In this lesson, we're doing a boot camp version of show and tell. Now that you've learned about the various features of leather and what you should consider before purchasing it, let's break it down even further. Now today, I'll be showing you examples of some items that I've designed and created, and we'll chat about the leather that I chose for each of those items, why I selected that particular leather, and whether or not it was a good choice. Let's start small. Now here you'll see a keychain, what I call a leather wallet card. It's the size of a credit card, and a bookmark. Now all of these items were done in vegetable tanned leather. Okay, they started out looking natural, right? If you remember what natural vegetable tan leather looks like, it's that kind of creamy color that we talked about in module 1. So all of those items were made out of a leather similar to this. It comes to me looking like this. And then I stamped the text and images that you see onto the leather and then hand dyed it. So to these final colors that you see here. Now this is, the keychain here is, I'd say it's about a 3 ounce leather, 3 to 4 ounce. And it's a medium to medium temper. You can bend it, but it's still kind of, it's not terribly too floppy. The wallet card's made of a 4 to 5 ounce vegetable tan leather. That's a kind of a medium temper. You can bend it, but it's pretty firm. I'd say medium to firm temper. It holds its shape very, very well. And this bookmark is also made from about a 4 to 5 ounce leather. You can bend it, but it's, I wouldn't consider this a soft tempered leather. As we discussed, if your goal is to create an item that has text or images stamped on it, you are going to want to use vegetable tan leather. And so that's why I chose this leather for all of those items, and it's the best choice. Now, you also will notice here at the end of the bookmark, while the body of the bookmark here is made of a vegetable tan leather, what I've used here as the cord is actually a chrome tanned leather with a very supple temper. Soft temper is the word I'm looking for. Okay, so this, look, like this moves very, very easily. Okay, it's an oiled leather, so it's very flexible and supple. And so I didn't choose to use a vegetable tan leather for the cord because that's really stiff. And if you're going to put this in a book, vegetable tan leather for the cord wouldn't turn down nicely like this. So sometimes when you're using a project or when you're making a project, you really have to think about not just what leather you like, but what would work for the application. And in this situation, it was best for me to mix 2 different types of leathers. The vegetable tan here for the body, which allowed me to add the personalized initials, and then the oiled chrome tan leather that I used for the cord. Another thing to keep in mind, whenever you're doing something where you have a stamped piece that has a lot of text on it, that's a time when you definitely want to make sure that you are choosing a leather that does not have imperfections in the area where you're stamping the leather, okay? Because that way the text stands out. If I had like a big brand, a natural brand on the leather going through that, it would really impede your ability to read the stamped text that you're adding on there. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you're going to be doing a project that has any sort of stamping or tooling on it. So next, here is a long wallet that I designed and made. This I did in an oiled chrome tan leather. It has a pretty significant texture to it. It's very supple. This is a 4 to 5 ounce leather. And as I said, it's a chrome tanned, oiled leather. and with a soft temper. It's very flexible, very pliable. And one of the reasons why I like, in addition to the texture, is for a wallet, for me, is that the slots, okay, these are card slots for credit cards or things like that. They, because of the kind of medium to soft temper, they're very easy to get the cards in and out. They mold easily. Whereas if I was to use a leather with a very firm temper, these would be super, super tight pockets. And it would take a very, very long time for them to loosen up. Leather does loosen over time. So if I use something that had tight pockets, it would loosen up over time, but I like this because it makes it pretty easy to get things in and out. For example, here's a cell phone pocket, or you could fit a passport in there. Boom, just goes in, nice in and out. And the I chose a 4 to 5 ounce weight for this. It's probably closer to 4 ounce because this is a trifold wallet. There's several sections to it, and I didn't want a leather much thicker than that, or it would have been really, really bulky. The more, as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see there how many folds you have. The thicker the weight of the leather you use, the bulkier the item is going to be. Okay, so that's why I picked something that was durable in its weight, but not too thick. Not something that was like an 8 or a 10 ounce leather. That would have made this wallet huge and super, super thick. Now, I love yoga and sweatpants, and I love skirts and dresses. If I'm not wearing one, it's likely that I'm wearing the other. As much as I like sweatpants, I don't wear them on a date night with my hubby. And as much as I love dresses, I wouldn't wear one to the gym. There isn't one single article of clothing that I wear to every life event every day. Different pieces of clothing are necessary for different events and activities. Similarly, different leathers are necessary for different projects. I love both of the leathers used for these bags, but they're totally different. The bag on the left here is made of a 4 to 5 ounce oiled chrome tan leather with a fairly soft temper. Okay, this bag is like my yoga pants, soft and comfy. And it also has a raw edge. That's natural to the hide. Remember how we talked about kind of imperfections and a natural raw edge? I left that on there. Some people like it, other people won't, but that's just one example of a rawhide. This is kind of, like I said, my yoga pants. Whereas this bag over here to my right is made of a 3 to 4 ounce chromed tanned leather with a pull-up effect for the body. That's the body. And these handles were done in a vegetable tan leather. This is like my skirts and dresses. Hello, I have arrived. Now, I mentioned that the body of this bag was done in a pull-up leather. And what that means, essentially, pull-up, is that when the leather is bent, where it's creased, the leather becomes light for a moment. And then over time, it will return gradually back to the natural color. So the body here was done in a chrome tanned leather with a pull-up effect, but the handles were done in a completely different leather, which was a natural vegetable tan leather that I hand dyed. Okay, that's why they're significantly different in color. And you'll see here that this is the 3 to 4 ounce. Even though this is a thinner leather than this, the weight of this leather here, the body, is 3 to 4 ounces. The weight or thickness, remember, weight and thickness of this leather is 4 to 5 ounces. So technically this leather is thicker, is a heavier weight, but it has a soft temper. So that it makes it very flexible. This leather doesn't hold its shape as well. Now it does now because I have things actually inside of the bag to kind of keep its shape. But if I took everything outside of this bag, it would just, in fact, let's do that. I'll take this stuff out. You'll see this bag, I could literally roll it up, okay, because it's a soft temper. This bag, I can't really do that with. It holds its shape better, even though it's a thinner leather. So that's why I chose to use this leather for this particular design. As much as I love this leather, if I had used it for this design, the bag wouldn't hold its shape as well. Okay. Similarly, you can see that these handles are standing up on their own. That's because this handle is made of two pieces actually sewn together. So it's very, very firm temper, both of these together. Again, with this bag here, you'll notice that I've mixed leathers. I personally do that often because, like I said, the leather that might be best suited for the body of the bag may not be the best leather for other portions of the bag. Even though this leather has a fairly firm temper for a 3 to 4 ounce leather, the handles, I wanted the handles to be something that were really sturdy, something that kind of were very hefty to hold on to. And if I had used this leather, even though it was a firm temper, the weight of it, as thin as it is, wouldn't have provided the same look for the bag. So it's possible that you may use multiple leathers, multiple types of leathers, maybe different colors, maybe even different tannage types, okay? So this is chrome tanned leather. Again, here in the body, this is vegetable tan leather. If you do it the right way, it's possible to mix those leathers. That's something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend on your first few projects until you really get a good grasp of the leathers you're working with. But if you have some, designs that you've been dreaming up, that is possible to do, mixing leathers. You just have to, again, know what you're working with. And you've learned that by now. Now, this is the very first bag I ever made, and I was pretty proud of the outcome. But I'm showing you this bag for another reason. Okay, even though the leather worked well with the design that I wanted to create, this is a 7 to 8 ounce weight leather. Okay, this happens to be vegetable tan leather, but it was actually pre-dyed during the vegetable tan phase. So that's possible to get. It's not terribly common, but it's vegetable tan leather, but it was already this color when I got it. But I'm primarily showing you this leather for the weight. It is super thick for a bag. It's a 7 to 8 ounce thick that baby is. It's really thick. Okay, it has, I'd say medium temper, but because of the thickness, it's very, very hefty. You can see those handles. So this is a 7 to 8 ounce bag. Now, consequently, it's really heavy even when it's empty. It's empty, but it's still heavy. Now, that wasn't a big deal for me because I'm a beefy gal. I'm almost 6 foot tall. I'm a pretty big girl. But recently, I had a customer who was petite, and she had recently had shoulder surgery. So she was looking for a bag that, now if she had seen this style of bag, she didn't want a bag that she carried on her shoulder because she had shoulder issues. Now technically this is not a shoulder bag. You would carry this here, or you would carry it here like at your elbow, right? So technically the design would have worked for her, but I would never have used this leather to make her a bag. Not because it's bad leather, it's actually amazing leather, but it wouldn't have been a good fit for her needs. It's too heavy. If she has shoulder issues or arm issues, carrying something like this around all day on a regular basis it's just not a good idea. The overall weight of the bag is too heavy for her. It's just not a good match. So these are some things that you need to think about anytime that any project that you're working on. Remember, not just picking a leather that you like. The leather has to fit not only the project, but the person that the item is for. So always keep that in mind. Anytime when I sell this bag, I always make sure that the customer knows, this bag will last forever. It's sturdy. You could use it as a weapon. Literally, you swung and hit somebody hard enough with this thing, they'd go down. But it's not a good fit for everyone if somebody wants a lightweight bag. And those are things take into consideration as well. Let's step away from bags for a minute and switch gears over to some journal covers or journal covers, book covers, things of that nature. This one here is just a very simple cover with a string wrap. And the body of the journal cover here is done in a very thin, like I'd say 2-3 at the most, but more like a 2-ounce leather. It's very slim profile. It feels incredible. It's very buttery, soft. It's an oiled chrome tan leather. On this particular one, I've kept the like a raw. This is a raw edge. It was natural to the hide. I kept that in there. But again, remember, it's not in a weight bearing area. It's not in a portion of. It's more kind of an aesthetic choice. Someone's either going to really like that or really not like it. But it does not affect the functional design and structure of the journal. But this is a thin, very thin, and as you can see, very thin and soft tempered leather. Feels very good, but it's not very structured. I have used for the string wrap a thicker, it's a bit thicker, 5 to 6 ounce weight, oiled chrome tan leather. And the reason I used this for the string wrap as opposed to this is because this leather is very thin and just doesn't work well with a string wrap. It's great again for like the body, but it's just if you're tugging on it and pulling it and stuff, it wouldn't have been a good choice to use for the string wrap. Okay, so moving on to something like this. What we have here is, again, another mixture of leathers. Now you can tell that this leather here, where I've got the quote, is very, very different from the body of the journal cover. Now the body of the journal cover is done in a 4 to 5 ounce oiled chrome tan leather. So again, this type of leather I can't stamp on. That's the reason why I mixed these. I couldn't have done all of this text stamping on this leather. Remember, you cannot text or stamp and tool on to chrome tan leather. Doesn't work. But this is nice because it feels really good. It has kind of that lush feeling to it. But the customer wanted this quote or this saying on it. So we compromised here, and this is how I was able to make it happen. This is actually a piece of vegetable tanned leather. It was, again, naturally veg tanned when I got it. I stamped it, and then I hand dyed it. And again, remember, if you're going to mix leathers like this, you'll never be able to dye the vegetable tan leather to be an exact match. It just won't happen because this chrome tan leather, remember, is dyed during the tanning process. It's already set. I can't change that. So, but you can mix the two if it's done right. We're not going over all of that in the boot camp here, but I'm just letting you see kind of how some of those things can work together, certain types of techniques. Now this one here is actually, the body of this journal is made out of the same leather as the last journal. It's that dark, very dark chrome tan leather. It has a smooth texture. This is a 4 to 5 ounce leather. This is a top grain. Okay? This isn't full grain, it's a top grain leather. And then I have a contrasting, very thin. This is like a 2 ounce leather. This is like an upholstery leather. This is kind of the type of leather that they use more to upholster like furniture and things of that nature. It's very, very thin. However, it's perfect for this type of a closure because you need something if you're going to use, it's hard for me to do this while I'm talking to you on camera and doing it live so you can still see it. But if you had a closure like this, if I had a really, really thick leather, it's hard to pull it through these D-rings. And even if you were able to, it would bunch up here really weird if it was super thick. So that's why I use this thinner. Now, this thinner leather isn't going to be ideal for everything, but it's actually a really great option for this type of a closure in this situation. So that's why I chose those two leathers. Again, different leathers, They're both chrome tanned, but they're different weights. This is a thicker weight, this is a thinner weight, and that was intentional based on the specifics of the design. Okay, and then this one here is, again, 2 different leathers. Doesn't always have to be 2 different leathers. I just realized I picked ones that were all 2 different leathers. Doesn't always have to be the case. I could have used the green leather for all of this, but I chose not to. And the reason was I just wanted a little bit of a contrast. And this right here is super thick. This is actually the same leather that I made that last bag out of, the really heavy bag that I told you could be used as a weapon. That's the same leather here. It's very thick, 7 to 8 ounces. And it is very good for things like this. When you're using button stud closures like this, you don't want leather that's very, very thin because it just doesn't stay as well when you use a closure like that. So that's why I use this thicker. This is a mid to medium temper. This here is a pretty firm temper, although I cut this here from, it was really close to the belly. It's not the belly portion, but I cut it kind of on the belly bend juncture. So while this leather in general, this hide is pretty firm, I chose an area of the hide that was a little more flexible. Remember, closer to the belly, the leather is more flexible because those fibers are not as tight. So this, and I did that on purpose. So it was nice and thick, but it wasn't terribly, terribly rigid. So that was why I chose that. Now I could have done the strap in the green and it would have worked just fine. I would not have done the body of this journal in this thicker 7 to 8 ounce weight. The reason being, it's just, if you look here on the inside, they have a pocket. This adds a decent amount of thickness to the cover. And so the thicker the weight, the more bulk you're going to get. Again, the more layers that you have to your project, the thicker the weight you use of leather, the bulkier it's going to be. So you want to take that into consideration. I'm going to jump back to bags for a moment. This is a duffel bag that I made, and the body, the darker brown body of the bag, is made in a 5 to 6 ounce chrome tanned oiled leather, okay, with a soft temper, full grain leather. It is great. However, because of the soft temper, okay, the good thing is that it kind of will mold to whatever inside of it, which is nice. However, this is empty, by the way. If I had done the whole bag in this same brown, it would have been droopy on the bottom, right? Anything, again, remember I have nothing in the bag. So if I would have put some clothes or something, even of remote weight inside of it, it would have drooped, and that's not cute. So that's why I used on the bottom a different leather. This here, this is a top grain. As you can see, it's very, very smooth, vegetable tanned leather. Now, that has a medium temper, and it helps hold the shape of the bag on the bottom. And it also gives the bag pretty firm handle. So you can see I used that veg tan here as a reinforcement on the zipper. I used that here for the handles because I wanted something that wasn't too soft for the handles. And I used that on the bottom here because that way when I hold the bag, if I put stuff in it, it's going to hold its shape. So that was another example of mixing leathers on purpose. And if I had used this heavier weighted leather for the whole bag, it really, really would have been difficult to make. Remember, sometimes just because a leather is firm temper or thicker doesn't make it better. Sometimes that actually makes it more difficult to work with. And this, for example, it was really hard to stitch these handles because the leather is not very pliable. I got it done, but it took a long, long time. Same thing for hand stitching here. If I had tried to make every piece of the bag from this thicker leather with a higher temper, it would have been incredibly difficult to do. Let me show you an example of how I learned this lesson the hard way. There's a reason I did this, and that's because I made this bag first. See that cute little bag? This bag here is made out of the same leather as the body of this bag. It's a 5 to 6 ounce chrome tanned oiled leather. It's very supple. You see how like you could just rod that up. Okay, now that's nice for some designs, but remember I have nothing in the bag. Remember what I said? If I put anything in this bag, look, it doesn't hold its shape. I mean, the whole bottom is going to fall out. Like, that's not cute. That was a hashtag fail. It's a poor choice of leather for this bag. So I made that whole bag, and then I realized, well, because I love this leather, and that's why I chose it. I chose it because I loved the leather, but I didn't think about the project that I was using the leather for, and that was the mistake I made. So don't want you to make that mistake. Don't just go into a leather shop or look online and pick a leather that you think is pretty, okay, or that you like. You touch it and you feel it and you love it. That's important, but that should not be the only factor that you use when selecting a leather. This was a very poor choice on my part. Like, it was a bad choice for this design. Now, I still use this leather for a lot of items that I make, but I will never, ever, ever use it for this bag again. In fact, this is one of those things that I keep around just to show what not to do. Okay, let's take a look at another bag. Here's another bag that I created. I was so excited to make this. I spent over 30 hours making this bag. 30, 30, 28, 29, 30. I was so excited to have like my own little like portfolio-y briefcase. Like, it has snaps in the back and turned down edges, and I was feeling myself when I made this bag. I was like, I'm gonna do this. This was like, you know, when you get really overzealous, has dividers and the inside of it. I was really excited. Crossbody strap that I don't have attached, but I was like, oh my gosh, I am so cool. Well, this is on my example list of what not to do, and here's why. I bought cheap leather to make this bag. Now, this is a very high level project. This is not the type of thing you should be doing for your first, second, or even third leatherwork project, right? It's completely hand stitched. Every stitch is done by hand, no machines. It was a pretty intricate project for me. Where I went wrong was I bought a cheap hide of leather, and I didn't do it on purpose. I did it because I didn't know any better, and I didn't think that buying the more expensive, higher quality leather would make that much of a difference. So I was like, oh, let me save a few bucks, because this particular leather wasn't cheap anyway. But I thought, let me save a few bucks. I mean, it can't be that big of a deal, right? Wrong. Like I said, I spent all this time making this bag, and let's find out where it happened. Oh, here on the back, right there, the leather cracked. You see that? Like, it cracked. It's like split right open. Right there on the crease. And I pretty much wanted to cry, because that shouldn't happen. Like, that's not good. And that's because that's not super high quality leather right there. And I also put an imperfection. If you can tell here, you can see here how there's like some insect bites. You can tell better on the inside. You can see right here, all those are insect bites. Okay, remember those from module? Sometimes earlier module in the boot camp? Those are all insect bites. And remember, I like imperfections. And I thought, well, hey, it can't be so bad because the imperfections are right here, right? This right here isn't so much weight-bearing structural part of the bag. So I kind of like the fact that you can see some imperfections. But what I didn't think about when I was doing this was that I didn't realize that some of those imperfections also came up to here, which is a high pressure point. This may not be a weight bearing part, but when you turn an edge over like that, that's a high pressure point. And the leather just split because it wasn't high quality, and possibly also because it was close to some decent imperfections. If I had to do this over again, number one, for a project like this, I would have done more research and I would have bought higher quality leather. Because remember when I said, start out doing your first few projects, make them simple. Don't go overboard. Even if you have a specific item in mind that you are determined to create and it's kind of a fancy item, that's great. Don't give up that dream, but don't start there. Start with something smaller, work your way up. Don't start with something like this for one of your first few projects, because I guarantee you it will not come out the way you expect. And when you have that much time and money put into a project, for something like that to happen, it really hits you where it hurts. Okay, so this is another example, a very costly example, both in time, in money, but mostly in my time, of kind of a waste. I mean, it's not a waste because I learned so much doing it, but I don't carry this. I don't take this out anywhere. More so because I get so frustrated with what happens. So I keep this to show you, you will not make this mistake. You will not make this mistake. And another thing I would have done is, this is the reason why when you're doing a large project, you always create some sort of a pattern for yourself and lay the pattern out on the hide. If I would have done that, if I would have laid each piece out on the hide before I cut it, then I would have known before I cut this piece, I would have seen, the top edge is going to fall right where there's an imperfection. That's probably not a good idea. I should rearrange things before I cut. So that was the lesson learned there. So that's what not to do. Now, if your goal is to focus on a few items, then you may find one leather that works for you and stick with just that one leather. For example, if your goal is to make dog collars and you have no interest in making any other leather goods, then it's possible that you may find one type or style of leather that you like and work only with that leather forever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you decide to branch out and make a variety of items and different designs, it's not likely that the same leather will be the best choice for all of those items. The more items you create, the more likely it is that you'll work with a wider variety of leathers. Now, I hope that my little version of show and tell helped you visualize how the information from the previous lessons translates into actual real-life leather goods. Now for your leatherwork assignment. Take a minute to review all of your notes and the answers to the questions on your cheat sheet. If you've changed your mind on a few of the answers, that's completely fine. Just remember, there's no right answer, just the answer that works best for your project. Once you're comfortable with your selections, transfer that information over to the summary on the bottom portion of the second page. This will serve as a recap of all the essential information you'll need for the final step: actually buying your leather. We're almost there. The next module is the last one, but we can't get there until you finish today's leatherwork. So get to it.